Fans of the survival horror genre have a new hellscape to immerse themselves in with striking distance. Studios, the Callisto Protocol, is here and takes players to the Jupiter's dead moon Callisto, where you'll find yourself in a maximum security prison. Security prison that has been overrun by nightmarish undead creatures and where there are few survivors left. Of course, you'll face many ordeals throughout the game, and to make things a bit easier for you, we have put together some handy tips and tricks to keep in mind. Explore. Callisto Protocol is a linear game and there isn't much room for exploration. In most cases you know where to go to advance in the story. Still, exploration is important, so be sure to keep an eye out for alternate paths, rooms, ladders that lead you to side locations, and the like. From Callisto credits to health injectors to audio logs and other useful loot. Close combat is a central part of Callisto Protocol gameplay, and dodging in turn is a crucial mechanic on this front. It works a little differently than you'd expect in this game, as dodging is done by holding the left stick in either direction before an enemy attack comes, and it's a little tricky, so remember to get the timing right. You just need to make sure you hold the stick in one direction before an enemy attacks you. Also remember that a single dodge is often not enough, because enemies can attack you in such situations with 2 or 3 quick strikes. Callisto Protocol, you can also block incoming attacks by holding down the left stick before an attack hits you. However, blocking can be counterproductive in most cases, but in our experience it's better to stick to dodging and save the credits for more useful upgrades. There are some special situations where blocking can be useful, for example against enemies that spit acid at you, so don't ignore it completely. Be arsenal, and using melee attacks against enemies is often preferable so you can save your limited ammo. Heavy attacks, as the name suggests, allow you to do greater damage with your batons, and they can also be used in conjunction with light attacks, making melee combat even more effective. While playing Callisto Protocol, you'll regularly encounter hazards in the environment, and finding ways to push your enemies into those hazards can be very useful in tense fights, especially when you're being pressed by multiple opponents. The gravity manipulating tool known as GRP is obviously the best way to do that. Aim for the legs and the tentacles. The Callisto Protocol contains more than a few keys from Dead Space. You'll be rewarded if you know exactly where you're shooting when a tentacled monster comes at you, because it's of the utmost importance to get rid of the tentacles first. In addition, it's also a good idea to aim at the enemy's legs, shoot them in the legs to make them stumble and fall, and then pull them towards you with your grip and stomp on their heads to finish them off, which will also save your ammo. You'll also encounter a number of enemies who will attack you from a distance. While you can always use up your bullets to take them out from a distance, as is the case in any survival horror game, this isn't the best tactic. Instead, you can simply pull these enemies towards you using the handle and then melee them or stomp them to death. Is a useful tool in combat. It can be just as useful, if not more so, when the enemies are dead. Stomping on their heads is recommended, as they usually drop loot, including smaller amounts of health and credits, when you kill an enemy. We have already mentioned how useful environment traps and kills can be, but they also have some disadvantages. For example, enemies that are dead stuck on spiked walls or that you have knocked off the map cannot drop loot because you cannot stomp on their bodies, which you should always keep in mind when you're harassed by multiple enemies at once. Using environment traps and GRP to push enemies off a precipice might make things easier, but you're also sacrificing loot, which isn't that big individually, but can add up sooner or later. Reloading is appropriate for a survival horror game. The Callisto Protocol forces you to think about how to use your weapons in different ways. It's not always easy to find the time to reload your weapon in the middle of a fight, especially when you're fighting multiple enemies in a small space. Also, Callisto Protocol has a rapid-fire mechanic that lets you interrupt your melee combos with a quickly fired projectile that deals additional damage, so it's recommended that you always reload your weapon as soon as you have a skirmish behind you. Healing in Callisto Protocol requires a certain amount of thought on the part of the player, as you'd expect from most survival horror titles. The primary way of healing is using health injectors, which you can do by pressing D. This isn't easy, though, because it can be quite a long animation, which means that healing in the middle of a skirmish is far from ideal. Our advice is to treat this the same way as reloading. Hey, be sure to subscribe to our channel and wait for our next videos, friends.